when I find out that someone started speedrunning before me, I immediately think they're 40. I don't want to sound like ignorant, but I think I can beat that. I have achieved all of my goals in every speedrun that I originally set across the board. There's one thing I have never done in a video game that I have wanted to do my entire life, and that is to...
Hey, Muttski.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on Speed Trap. How are you doing?
Oh, no problem. Thanks for asking me to come chat. I am doing just well. Just fresh off of a speedrun of a new FF7 category that I've been working on. So literally just finished that like 30 minutes ago.
Nice. What's the category? I think it's no major skips or something like
Yeah, no
that.
major skips. Yeah. So essentially what has happened with the game is that over the course of the time that I've run it, it has gone from having like no real serious like moments that skip like large chunks of the game to being like half of the time that it was when I started running it. So when I started running it, under 8 hours was like a competitive time, and now the any percent run is going to be like 4 hours and change. So
Wow.
this category has kind of like reverted back to kind of like keeping something intact that essentially plays through the whole game without, any like crazy big long skips that miss out on any of the, I guess, like story or plot heavy sections, and also just like any of the areas that you would be forced to visit when you play
Right.
the game casually.
That's cool. I didn't know that any percent run had gotten that low. I know that there's that really cursed like skip where you have to trick the game into letting you walk across the mountains with
So
the Zolom and stuff, but I didn't know how
basically,
much I don't know how much stuff any of that saves.
like that premise that you could use to manipulate where the game thinks or where you're at on the world map on like the triangle polygons that make up the world map. That premise, which we used to go underneath the mountain and basically skip all of the Calm flashback and the Mithril Mines straight to Junon, it's that same idea, but now we do it. I guess I don't want to say we because I have not done it yet, but I've like watched
Right.
the kind of development and unfold. I'll learn it at some point, but not right now. You do the same premise to go under the ocean and basically come out at the final location of disc one. So
Oh.
you leave Midgar, which is like the first, hour and a half of disc one, and then you skip the next essentially 2.5 hours of the game. Yeah, it's crazy. So it's completely flipped the game up on its upside down on its head for a little while.
Yeah.
And so the category that I've been learning now, it's kind of going the other direction to just kind of keep something that plays through the whole game. Not that I am anti skip or anti glitch. Like I said, I will definitely learn the new any percent run at some point. But yeah, and it just seemed like a good time. People seemed really interested in going to do like a no major skips run, with the way that I like to play the game, and that after hearing other people saying that they'd be interested in it, I sent them all the notes that I had and stuff and whatnot from the years before. So the route we're using is a route from 2014 that we have readapted and adjusted for some just like optimizations that have been discovered over the last 10 years. And so we're kind of doing like the original FF7 run that I did more or less in 2024 in a new category, which has been a lot of fun. It's been a good time.
That's really cool. Are you doing it with slots or without?
With of course.
Nice. Okay. Because back in the day, I used to watch a fair amount of FF7 when like Caleb Hart and Ashnab were grinding it.
Hmm.
He's actually grinding it again, although I don't really watch his channel anymore. But because it was all no slots for like a really long time, like everybody was running no slots. But then at some point, it flipped over. People got into running with slots.
Yeah, and I mean, no slots is obviously still definitely the most popular category, and the new any percent category just skips the opportunity to even you don't even go to where you would get Kate Sith and learn slots.
Oh
So like
wow,
that whole section is just gone. Yeah, yeah.
that's great. That's cool. How was the run though? Did it go well?
It went really well. Yeah, actually did go really well. I made a few dumb mistakes. This run was more of like, I don't know if you're familiar with the DKC and FF7 runner Dumays from Brazil, but he's been working on this with me, and he and I basically both each did a run more or less as like a proof of concept that the route that we're using and the manips that we're trying to use to like both manipulate the encounters you get just like naturally throughout the game using a step route, and also the final descent area in the game where you jump on these all these rocks. There's like a random chance that you get an encounter on each of them, but it's not actually random. You can like find the value and set the value by using various animations on screens and transitioning them at the right time so that you don't get any. And all of that worked completely as intended. So this was kind of like my proof of concept run, we'll say. But it went well. Everything went well. We finished, which I guess is the big deal. The one thing with slots runs specifically is that if you mess up once, you like probably die. Like it's really volatile. Like it is really difficult to recover if you make a single mistake. Like if you miss one, you're probably cooked. Like
You're just like using slots
the next
instead
turn.
of being leveled up enough to actually win the fights.
More or less, yeah.
So that's actually really cool that you're running that again, because obviously one of the things I want to talk about is sort of how you got into speedrunning. Was FF7 in 2014? Was that your introduction to speedrunning?
Final Fantasy IX was the first game I ran, but Final Fantasy VII was the first speedrun that I like watched on Twitch. So I was like super into. I had just moved. I just graduated from Penn State. I moved to Houston. I didn't have any friends or family there. I literally just went for the job. I was interested in the job that I had taken there. And so I didn't have any friends or family for the first semester that I was working there. But I was pretty active on the Final Fantasy Reddit. And I had just saw that someone posted like a link with a clip of the Materia Keeper fight in Final Fantasy VII where they do this trick where they manipulate its HP using poison ticks so that it kills itself with this weird game mechanic that I won't get too much in. That I'm sure you know, but I'm not gonna like try to explain too deeply. And I just thought that was really cool. And then after I started watching some of these FF7 runs on Twitch, I was like, there's one thing I have never done in a video game that I have wanted to do my entire life, and that is to get the Excalibur 2 Ultimate Weapon in Final Fantasy IX, which is inherently a speedrun built into a game from 1999, 2000. And so that's kind of what piqued my interest. Is I was like, I bet there's a way to kind of like apply this premise to 9. And so essentially I like tried to find, at the time there was like not like an organized Final Fantasy community like there is today. There weren't like, there was no speedrun.com. There was no like resources or guides. So I found a VOD of the then world record holder called Karakarn, who I still talk to and who still runs 9 and 10 to this day also. But at the time, you weren't allowed to have like any commentary over your VODs for like if they were a world record VOD on Speed Demos Archive. So it was just a silent VOD. And so I'm like watching this VOD. I don't know him, so I can't just like DM him or whatever. And I just made all my notes based off of his record of what I thought he was trying to do. And I was right about most of it, but there were some things that I definitely was not right about. But then it ended up being able to kind of manufacture my route that I used for 9 based off of his VOD and his route for the most part into something that did work, even though there was a ton of it that was vastly unoptimized at the time. And then 9, dude, it felt like 9 just became like super popular. So then I ran that for, started running that in January of 2014. So I started learning the run and like making my notes right before Christmas of 2013, and then did my first Twitch stream January 2014 for 9, and then just kind of segued into running a bunch of the other Final Fantasy games and some other things.
Yeah, I know you've run all of the PSX Final Fantasy games, and I think some 10 as well.
Yep, at this point I've done 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then some of the spin-offs like World of Final Fantasy.
Oh, nice.
Those are the main ones, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all different. That's the cool thing is like, even though the series is the same in name and are generally similar in how a lot of them play, all the runs are just so different. It kind of makes it really cool. And I think the reason that I got into them, into playing them, and definitely into speedrunning them, is that like in high school and early in college, I was like, math was like the thing I was good at. I was good at math, and like I majored in physics when I applied to college and all that whole deal. So I was very math centric person, but I like what I was passionate about was like classic literature and movies. And like RPGs are like the like bonding of those two things more or less when you really think about like kind of how to route speedrunning. an RPG, like it's a game that is very story and character based that requires to like understand and optimizing mathematics to beat it more or less, right? And I think that's kind of what got me into them and why I like them so much. And I know
That's
that RPG
interesting.
speedruns are definitely not for everybody, and that's fine. But I thoroughly enjoy them. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've tried running some RPGs. I ran a little Chrono Trigger, and I tried to learn Final Fantasy IV, but I find just like the amount of downtime in them kind of
mm.
exhausting. Which I know that you've actually said. I lurk in your you know, I often will just say good luck and nothing else in your chat, but I lurk there a
Yep.
bunch. And I heard you saying just the other day that you actually like really like the immense amounts of downtime in
I
RPG
have
runs.
I like unabashedly am very open about how bad my ADHD can be at times, and like RPG speedruns with having those moments of like just like 2, 3, 4, 5, for sometimes even like 8 minutes of just mindlessly mashing through text. I can just talk about people in my chat with about whatever the hell they want with basically no risk of like a time loss or penalty for
Right.
most of those times. And the other thing with it too, like outside of just having that the chance to talk about whatever, is that it also just affords you a really good chance to talk about like the soul of the game and the story that people fell in love with. And like I find that most of the people that are regulars in my channel, like sure they like speedrunning, but I think what they like more is to talk about Final Fantasy games and to talk about their favorite characters when they were a kid and you know
Yeah.
how much their opinions are the same as they were when they were 10 or how different they are now, you know. And I think that not that you can't do that with some other games, but like for instance, like I know you've had a lot of like LTTP runners on here and you know I ran that for quite a few years. It is so much more difficult to like unfocus for 30 seconds and just have like a conversation with someone about I don't know Hyrule in that run. You know what I mean? Like it's just a very different vibe. And I also really enjoy running games like that too.
Yeah.
It just scratches a different itch, you know?
That's totally fair. I think also like Final Fantasy people, myself included, I'm a big Final Fantasy guy, casually, have like a very different relationship with the games than like Zelda people do. Like there are people who care about Zelda lore, but like everybody who plays Final Fantasy like cares about
Yeah, yeah.
the story and the characters and stuff. Like when I play Zelda games, I care about like the puzzles and the items and the
Mhm.
stuff like that. Like I don't but Final Fantasy games, like I think they attract a different kind of person, or at least a different side of people. So like, you know, people have been having debates about what the best Final Fantasy games are online since, you know, presumably since Usenet. Although I wasn't there at that point. I guess Usenet
For
probably
sure.
predates Final Fantasy One a little bit,
Yeah, that's yeah, probably. Because I think FF1 was like what, like 87, 88, something
somewhere
like
around
that.
there.
So.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. I also just like so one thing about really long speedruns is that I feel like you're often in this situation where the run's kind of dead and you have 7 hours left of it or 5 hours left of it or whatever. And I feel like that would be a real problem for me. I would get annoyed by that. Although maybe not. I don't know.
So there's a couple of types of people that run the like RPG games, and there's me, which I was talking about this on stream today because someone asked about this. Someone actually complimented me. They were like, "I really like watching your stream because you never reset." Even when you know your run is basically dead, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 hours in. And I always tell people that like I love being competitive and I love trying to do as well as I can and I want to get, you know, all of the new best times that I possibly can as much as I can. But like I don't grind the speed run just because I want to get a new best time. I grind it because I really enjoy playing them. And for me, like once I'm like 2 or 3 hours into the game, I'm just like in it for the run. Like you know, and I just accept that this run is not going to be the one, and that's fine. And I'm still going to have fun with it. And there maybe there'll be a moment where I learn something new, or I have like a weird thing happen in a fight that is uncommon that I have to react to that I am like, wow, I executed that well. I dealt with that well. But maybe there isn't. And it's just like me gaming the same game that I've been playing for, you know, 20, 25 years. And that's fine too. Um, then there's the other type of person. So there's some runners like the Brutals, who currently has the FF9 record, A-Bomb, who formerly had it, Lose Bell, who formerly had it, Close to War, who runs a bunch of Final Fantasy games that are not 9, but he's like done a lot of work on the remake and Rebirth games and had the FF10 record. And dude, like Close to War did like an FF10 run that he was like on record pace, and he like made a mistake like 9 hours in, and he just smashed the reset button and ran it back.
Oh
like
my
there
God.
those people exist for sure. And while I admire their commitment, I am definitely not one of those people. But yeah, I think that there's like a couple mindsets in that. And then there's some people, like there are some certainly times where if I'm like not like if I have like a headache or I'm not feeling great, or like, maybe I'm just kind of going through the motions, and I finish like the second disc of, one of these 4 disc games that I run, and the time is just like dog water bad. Like, yeah, sometimes I'll just call it and just play something casually, but
Yeah.
you just kind of have to like gauge what your mindset is and like what it is you're really trying to get out of it, because like you said, it's a long commitment. Finding time and picking the time to do the run is honestly like one of the more difficult things to do to prepare for the runs at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're recently full-time streamer for a while, which I suppose makes that a lot easier. You have less to schedule
It is it
around.
is quite it is quite nice for sure, because
Yeah.
I just wake up, kind of take my time getting ready in the morning. Sometimes I was getting up pretty early for a little while, which I kind of liked, and I might go back to streaming a little bit earlier than I have been. Seven's a little bit shorter, so I haven't been like as in a crunch to get started as I am with 9. Seven's like a 7.5 hour run, and 9 is, it can be between 8 hours 45 minutes and 9 hours and 15 minutes. So like definitely like a bigger window to kind of prep for.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, having the time to do it, I like doing it. I definitely don't want to do it forever at all. But it's definitely what I'll do for the rest of 2024.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's been going well, the full-time streaming.
It really has been. I better than I expected. Like, I mean, like I kind of went into it. I know, I know, and I'm really thankful that I have a large enough following on Twitch of people that like hanging out enough to make it feasible that I could,
Yeah.
live off of. Like so far, I've been able to, make enough to sustain myself without actually having to dip into my savings, which I like had already factored into how long I was gonna, be jobless while I
Right.
was immigrating. Because I had just immigrated from Canada, which but for people that don't have the context, and I've basically just been waiting for my permanent residency to be approved, which it has now been, and now I'm just waiting for my permanent residency card rather to arrive, and then I can actually like start to look for and apply for work, like a normal person. But for like several months, like you were saying, like this was the only work that I could really do, and I'm glad it went as well as it did. I was really stressed about it going into it, because like obviously like you think of, what if this doesn't work out? What if I've completely miscalculated how much I'm gonna make doing this, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I've been really fortunate. I actually haven't had to touch my savings yet,
That's great.
so it's been fantastic because of that. Yeah, I've been really really thankful. So yeah, really 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 happy.
And you're not at all tempted to keep it up and stay a full-time streamer?
I just think that I am definitely just like I would definitely like classify myself as like an introverted extrovert. Like I like to spend my time by myself and like play video games by myself, and I like streaming for 8 hours and doing that, and I have fun doing that. But I think like for a career, I want to be doing something where I'm like surrounded by people,
Okay. Yeah.
and like working with other people. I like to like do stuff. I definitely, while I like working from home, I'm definitely one of those people that I'm like, I could work from home or I could not work from home a single day in the year, and I would be happy with either.
Interesting.
I don't know. I like both. I think there's things I like about both, and yeah. So that's where I'm at now.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad it's going well for you. I wanted to go back. So you're sort of saying you seem really like chill about losing runs and just playing the games that you like. Were you always
Mm,
like that? Personally, I feel like that. Well, I haven't really been speedrunning much lately, but like
mhm.
last time I was like streaming and speedrunning a ton, I felt like that a lot. Like I would play Link to the Past mostly, and sometimes you get a run, you lose a minute and a half to bad RNG in the middle, and I just like was eventually reached a point where that didn't bother me. I was just gonna play the game and see what I could do with it. But it took me like a while, right? So I was wondering if this is like just a natural temperament, or if you got there through some like if this was a matter of personal growth for you, what your journey was like.
I mean, I definitely would have been much more apt on like kind of smashing that reset button pretty heavily. You know, half hour, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes into the run earlier on than I am now. And you know what I think a lot of it is that like once you get, and maybe you experienced this with Link to the Past, and maybe this is partially why you kind of experience that trajectory too. I wonder if it's once you get such a good time that PBing is so freaking hard that you just kind of go into it knowing that like the PB run is for sure an outlier of your data points, right? Like the PB is an outlier by definition.
Yeah.
It's not going to be on like the chart of like your runs that you would expect. And I wonder if like that has just like helped me kind of settle in and just like realize that like not every run needs to be your best run. And here's the thing is like so this summer I didn't get a PB in FF9 this summer, but I did through no reset runs have my second best, my third best, my fourth best, and my fifth best runs. Right? Like it's not like I had dog shit
Right.
runs all year, right? And so I think that sometimes, especially with a game as long as that has so much like ebb and flow in time loss and time game, unlike a game that's like super optimized like Link to the Past, sometimes I think people are just hitting the reset button because like one or two things go wrong, but there's plenty of opportunities for one or two things to go
Right.
extraordinarily well down the line that I don't think a lot of games really have in their speedruns in that sense. You know what I mean? Like if you're playing Link to the Past and you get 8 blue balls and then you take a death to Helmasaur. Like I don't care how good you are, like you're not PBing. Like
Right.
it just is what it is. But in like an FF9, like I'm sure at some point in my current PB, I bet I was 2 minutes behind my PB that existed before that. Like
Yeah.
that is definitely not uncommon. Um, and so I think that certainly helps. And also just like I'm just like I don't want to say I don't care as much anymore, but like we'll say that this is how I have achieved all of my goals in every speed run that I originally set across the board. Like I don't really have to prove anything else to myself. Like I had goals A, B, and C. I achieved goals A, B, and C, and I'm happy with them.
Yeah.
We did the math. Of people that have done 7, 8, 9, and 10 runs. I think we figured out between me and Kara. I think who was the 9 runner that I told you I originally watched. I think he's the only person who's like net time across all 4 of those games is better than mine, and it's by like 4 or 5 minutes or something. So I'm like really happy with how I've done with all of them, and so I think I'm just like I still have like that competitive mindset, and I still want every run. Like I obviously practice my ass off for all of them, and I want them to go well. But like I also just if the run doesn't go well, I'm not as bothered anymore. So yeah, I would say I used to be a lot more, but now just like way more laid back about it. And because I know I'm doing it between 30 and 40 hours a week, I just think you have to kind of like embrace the fact that you're just gonna have bad runs, and it's
Yeah.
important to just kind of try to finish some and also sometimes there's just cool people in chat that I want to spend more time with talking to because they like the same nerdy shit that I do and they're fun to talk to, you know?
Yeah, the hanging out aspect is definitely a good reason to stick around. Because, like, a lot of the time, even if you don't care about the run anymore, you still want to be streaming,
Mm.
right? And so,
Yeah.
might as well keep going.
Let me ask you from your end, like whenever you come and you say good luck and then you just go lurk, like at the end of the day, do you actually care that deeply if my run is gonna PB or not?
No, no, no.
That's what I mean. Like I feel
The
like
PB is for you, not for me.
yeah, I think that it's exciting for the audience to have like a narrative to follow,
Yeah.
right? But most of them are just there because they just like the vibe of the stream. They know that I'm like a pretty laid back person and they know what my interests are and I think they have many of the same ones as me and I think people just want to like chill, have some background noise of a game they like and
Yeah.
I think I kind of feel that way, I guess, about doing the runs myself too, sort of.
Yeah. And I think to your point that, like, you hit your 4 of your top 5 best ever runs, I think that, especially in a game with a bunch of RNG, which I think FF9 has huge time swings due to RNG, right? Basically, whether or not
Yeah.
you get encounters and probably other stuff.
Exactly, which is why like on segment A it could be a delta of plus 90 seconds, and then segments B and C could both be a delta of like minus 20 or 30 seconds,
Yeah.
and that would not be abnormal at all.
And if you're like kind of looking at it from the wide view, it's like, is your second best run and your PB, are they actually different? Like, you know, different stuff happened, but you probably played about the same, right?
They,
So,
I, I would bet you if we ran them side by side, I think it would be really interesting just to see
yeah, that would
like
probably be a cool like
I think it would be
vodcast.
interesting to see like one kind of gain ground over
Yeah.
the other, etc. It would actually kind of be a fun watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there a PSX trilogy leaderboard? So, like for Zelda, there's a Z1, Z2,
There,
Z3 trilogy
there,
leaderboard.
there
Okay.
is a 7, 8, and 9 leaderboard. Yes,
Are you on it? Are you number one? Are you
of
two?
course, of course. I think now I think I'm third.
Ooh, that's
Yeah, I'm
something to
third
shoot
now.
for.
The thing is with those is that it's like it's just so much gaming. Like, but I could definitely.
Oh! I don't mean back to back. Are you talking about back to
Oh
back?
yeah, like the leaderboard. It's like
Oh! No,
one go.
I mean like
No,
sum
there's
of
not.
PBs. Yeah.
There's not like one that's like a sum of
Okay.
PBs.
Okay.
No. That would be sweet, but no.
You've done the 7, 8, 9 back to back though.
Yeah, a couple
A
times.
couple. That's like a 24
Yeah.
hour stream, right?
Yeah. It's a little at the time it
Brutal.
was a little bit more with like the newest strats and optimizations for all the runs, it's a little bit less, but yeah, it's right around exactly a day.
That's crazy. I'm exhausted if I stream for 3 hours. I can't. I
When
don't know.
I was like, you know how like they always tell you they're like, listen, if you're like gonna push for Twitch partner, don't do anything like toxic to yourself. Dude, I was doing those like every other weekend.
Oh my god.
I would just buckle up and do a 79 run. Well, good. Yeah, it was like one of the best ways to kind of grow my following at the time because I was like just starting to hit my curve and my stride, and there was just people that would watch during those runs from East Asia, Australia, and all these time zones that just typically don't really tune in because it's just not really viable for them. And so I met a bunch of people from like these random places from all over the world just because I was streaming at, all hours of one day every other weekend or so. But I haven't done one in a long time just because it's like, yeah, it's too long.
That's got to be a good way to get your, because a big part of partner is getting concurrent
Mhm.
viewers, right? And so if
Yeah.
you stream for 24 hours, you get a lot of people, with your who fall asleep with your stream in the background.
That was definitely part of the wave that I ran. I And because I was doing it relatively frequently, like I only applied for partner one time. Like
Wow.
so I got the minimum met, but I was like kind of in the middle of doing that. So I didn't apply right away. So I had the like 75 minimum or whatever it was whenever they added that. I waited until my concurrent was over 100
Hmm.
later that summer, and then I applied. And funny enough, I got the acceptance while I was doing a 789 run.
Nice.
But no, I met some cool people through it. Do you know the seems good emote?
Yeah.
I like talked to that guy because of the 789 runs. His name's Paul. He's super great. He's actually like a big Final Fantasy fan. He's really nice. So if you like seems good emote, confirmed seems good does like FF7, 8, and 9.
That's cool. I did not know that. Was he like a streamer? I never thought about the
He
provenance of
he like
that.
has a Twitch page. I don't really think he streams much at all anymore, and
That's funny.
probably only like a little bit early on. But yeah, no, he pops in every once in a while. Still, sometimes I get excited whenever he comes. I obviously immediately troll him by telling everyone in my chat to spam the seems good emote, but he's a super nice guy. Yeah, so that like I didn't meet him. Like I don't know him in person, right? But
No,
I met
no,
him
yeah.
and like spoke to him because of those runs, which was cool. I was going to ask. So earlier you mentioned that you had spent some time with the greatest Super Nintendo game that's ever been made, which is called Chrono Trigger.
Hmm.
Are you a big Chrono Trigger fan?
I love Chrono Trigger. Yeah. I learned the like no lava shell
LSS?
skip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is a pretty glitchy and RNG manipulated run. which is pretty fun. I want to play it more, but it's got a couple things that make it difficult for me to get into, which are it's like long and has a lot of cutscenes, which is kind of boring, and the practice tools aren't that good.
Yeah.
The like SD to SNES has save states built in, but they don't work with Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. They're really finicky. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like have to practice on emulator, or else just like do a bunch of really bad runs as practice. So I've never really gotten back into it, but it was a really cool run. I spent I don't know how long, maybe 2 months or something on it a few years ago, and I got the sub 3.
That's like the solid bar for
that's like
category.
the you've actually learned the run
Mm-hmm.
kind of level.
No, that's sweet. Yeah, Link to the Past is like my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time, like since I was a kid. But like Chrono Trigger is like the one that I'm like, the Super Nintendo spent almost 10 years on our shelves so that this game could exist.
Yeah.
Sort of deal. I love that game.
I'm still in Chrono Trigger. Every time I watch someone play it or watch a speedrun or whatever, I am so blown away by some of the art stuff that they managed on that console.
Like the sprite work and stuff.
The spriting is crazy. Some of the backgrounds are ridiculous. Yeah, that they pulled that off on a SNES.
Especially when like if you like look back, like starting at like FF4 and then like Mystic Quest, FF5, FF6, you can see just like the progression, and then just by the end, man, it's just it just looks so good.
Yeah, great stuff.
Oh yeah, I just heard you mention that game, and I'm just like, fucking love that game.
Have you ever run it?
So this is my thing with Chrono Trigger speedruns. I have spent more time practicing and like learning and just grinding out practice of all the segments of no LSS like you ran without ever actually streaming a single run of it.
Oh man.
So like I knew all the skips, I knew all the fights. I could like keep the RNG manip well and then reset it at the points that you needed to and whatnot. And I learned it all, did the whole thing. I spent so much time practicing it, and then I just never did a run. Yeah.
Why not?
I think I was just more interested in learning it, honestly.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like you said, like sometimes it just doesn't click, and you're like, all right, maybe this isn't the most exciting thing in the world. But I liked practicing it. I guess I just liked learning the strats, and I liked learning the boss fights, and I liked learning the skips, and I think that was like the extent of what I wanted to do.
That's fair. It's also not very forgiving. I guess you said that any percent FF7 is not forgiving now, but like Chrono Trigger is all manipped, and so by the time you're about halfway through the game, if you're off manip, you just cannot win any fight at all. So anytime you fall off manip, you basically have to reload whatever your last save was, which is like frustrating. And
some of those fights, like the Magus fight, if you're off, can be just brutally
you can't do
slow.
it off. Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I get it. It's not that easy to just like boot up and sort of chill over for a while. It's pretty intense focus for the most part, I think, except for when you're just waiting, mashing text.
Yeah.
So you've done all the Final Fantasy games. You've also done some other stuff besides RPGs. Obviously, you've run Link to the Past. You have got a pretty good time in that. I don't know what else you've run though. What's your sort of like rough timeline of games you've run?
Okay, so other things I've run. The second game I ever actually learned the speedrun for was Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped.
All right.
The platformer. Yeah, that was the first PlayStation game I ever owned as a kid, and my mom, so I have two sisters and two adopted brothers who are my I guess my biological cousins, and like for various reasons, like their parents both passed away, and my parents took them both in. So like my family went from 3 kids to 5 kids like overnight. And so my parents, like we weren't poor, but like my parents basically would just get us like some board games and like a video game or something for Christmas, and we would just like share, like, so we didn't do like individualized gifts very often. And I remember in like 97 or 98 or something, for like 2 years, we were like begging my mom to get us an N64 and like Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64. And my mom was like, all right, I'll think about it. And she like did all this research, I guess, and she bought us a fucking PlayStation 1 instead. And at first we were all like devastated. We were like, what have you done? but she bought us Crash Bandicoot Warped was the game that she had bought us, and then shortly after she got us Spyro the Dragon, and I was like, this is the greatest video game console I've ever played. And so yeah, so those games were like really really special to me, and definitely got me into the PlayStation 1 library, which is now one of my favorite video game libraries. It would go like probably like Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 are probably like my bread and butter of like games to play casually now. So I learned Crash Bandicoot Warped until I got like kind of like the sub 3 no LSS Chrono Trigger time of Crash Warped, we'll say. And then I learned Spyro the Dragon.
Nice.
And those were like the two big like action platformer games that I speedran. I didn't really do a whole bunch of them until much, much later when I learned the most difficult speedrun I have ever learned, which is a fan game called I Wanna Be the Bashi.
Yeah.
Which, if you're unfamiliar, is a fan-made game based off of another, I guess, sort of indie fan game called I Want to Be the Guy, and it is just like a notoriously tricky precision platformer with really difficult bosses. My death count after my first casual playthrough was like 17,000 deaths. And even in my like current PB, my death count is like 180 deaths. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's super easy to just cleanly get through it. My wife Emma asks me to speedrun it sometimes because she loves watching it, but it is so frustrating that if I'm an incredibly patient person, like both in what I do in my career when I speedrun Final Fantasy 9 or 7, no matter how frustrating they get. But that game, dude,
That's the one that gets you.
pushes me to the literal brink. Yeah, it's so rough sometimes. But it's a really sweet game, especially if you watch people that are actually like really, really good at it. I learned it. I learned that, and I learned Pokemon Fire Red, because one of my good friends from Final Fantasy 9, his name's Mr. Zwanzig, and he didn't have a console, and he was learning and running the FF9 run on emulator, and he really wanted a console. I had just bought a new one, and I told him if he paid for the shipping, I would ship it to the Netherlands for him, and he could just have my old one because it still worked. It was just not the fastest model. And so he paid for the shipping. I sent it to him, and then I woke up on Christmas like 2 weeks later, and he had beaten my time in FF9 with the console I sent him.
Ooh.
So then I just made a list of games he ran, and I was just like, I'm gonna grind all these until I beat all of your times. And those are two games that are on that list.
Is your time better than his now in FF9?
Yes, yeah. He doesn't really run FF9 anymore. He runs Final Fantasy 13, which is like the most difficult Final Fantasy speedrun. So he's just cooler than me now anyway.
Ooh. I didn't know that was the most difficult. Have you run it?
It's super hard. I've learned a chunk of it. Everyone in the 13 community knows that I love the game and that I really, really respect the speedrun, and they keep trying to bully me to learn the rest of it. It's so much time. Like, even though that game is only, the speedrun's like 4.5, 5 hours long if you're good at it, it's just so much time investment to learn a long game that like I'm just kind of like over doing that now, like I'm happy to learn an updated route for a game I already learned, but to just learn a whole new long game, I'm like, I don't know if I can do it anymore. I'm too old. So I just live vicariously through the people that are good at 13 because I really like that game and I love that speedrun. It's just got like really, really tight windows for like paradigm shifts and how you set up to defeat bosses at the like low levels that they are. It's crazy. It's so skillful.
I really like that game casually, but it's like never been re-released. Like you can play the PS1 and PS2 games on like Virtual Console now or whatever the re-releases are. But I like don't have a way to play FF13, which is annoying. I'd like to replay it sometime.
When they do a 13 trilogy collection for the PS5, it will be the greatest day of my life.
Yeah,
dude, I don't know how they haven't re-released it for any console subsequent to the ones that it originally came out on. I really want to get the platinum trophy in it, and I don't have any way to do it right now. So.
Yeah, bummer.
Good game though. I think that's most of the games, and then there's this game. This is my other baby. This is called Pong: The Next Level.
Ooh, who's that
This is
signed
a
by?
this is signed by a bunch of Final Fantasy IX runners that I did marathons with
That makes
over the
sense.
years. I bought this game mostly as a joke at a marathon because I played it when I was a kid and I knew more or less how to beat all of the stages. And I saw what the record was at the time and I was like, I don't want to sound like ignorant, but I think I can beat that. And I literally just posted up in the practice room of this marathon and played it over and over again until I beat the record
Wow.
on the leaderboard for it. Yeah, I actually don't have the record anymore. Someone has since bopped me, but it's been really funny. So like I don't really play it all that much. It's kind of like a joke and a meme on the stream that like they call me Pong God Muttski like as a joke, obviously. And I I put the video on YouTube and this like person that doesn't watch speedrunning commented or sent me a DM and he's like, "Hey, there's this one stage you're doing that's taking you like 3 minutes and you can actually just cheese it and it takes like 20 seconds." This random dude just completely changed the speedrun out of nowhere for Pong
Yeah.
the Next Level. So yeah, it's crazy. But I always joke that this is what I'm gonna run in the finale of AGDQ one year, so we're holding our fingers crossed. We'll see.
Have you been in GDQ?
I've been in GDQ twice now. I ran Final Fantasy IX in 2019, and then I did Final Fantasy VIII in 2020, like immediately before the pandemic, like
Oh,
really
that
hit the
January.
States.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Nice.
it went from like everything was completely normal at GDQ to the world is shut down in,
Yeah.
8 weeks or whatever. It was
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Yeah, I have your speedrun page up here. You actually have times in like a lot of random things. You have like a RE3 run.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
have
I was running
Tetris
Resident Evil
99
3.
runs.
Oh yeah, I also did that. Those are actually not even that old either. I can't believe I forgot about both of them.
Oh, I
Yeah, I'm
actually
not much of
remember you
a.
doing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 also.
Um,
That was a project for a while.
yeah, I was super deep into Xenoblade 2 for a couple of years. That is probably like the most like serious grind of a game that I've done in the last like 3 or 4 years. Like I really wanted to get a sub 4 hour time in that game. Um, and there is this annoying thing. Like the final boss, you have like a status effect basically that you need to apply to them, and you have like 3 chances to do it, and each one is like a 55 or 60% chance. And there was like a string of sub 4 runs that I got like 3 or 4 or 5 in a row. And I missed all 3
Oh
chances.
god.
Like all 3 of them failed. So like people always joke the boss is called Ion. And now whenever people fail it, they call it the Muttski Ion. And it feels so bad. But I did eventually get one. And I have not speedrun the game ever since that day. That sub 4 is the last run I ever did.
Yeah, you have a 359.
Hell yeah.
We count those. You have oh, there's some co-op here with Emma, of course. That makes sense.
Mm. We've done a couple runs together.
Yeah. Which oh, you played the PSP release of Final Fantasy. I think that's the most popular speedrun, right?
Yeah, it's just super. It's like the shortest one, and um, like the NES. Like I hate to be that person because I like watching the NES run, but every time I put it on and try to play it again, I'm like, dude, I can't look at this anymore. It's just so slow, and I just can't. So I watch a couple of people that still run the NES FF1, but that is plenty good for me.
I recently played FF1 for the first time and I chose to play the NES version.
I think that's the right choice. How did you find it, by the way?
So I loved it. I had a great time, but it is
I'm
like
glad
a
you liked it.
pretty fucked up game. Like it has really profound problems. Like the fact that the only way to get through the game is going to town and buying 99 potions one at a time, like over and over and over again throughout the whole
Yep.
game. Like that's not fun game design. But I don't know. I was there for it.
There was definitely some quality of life improvements
Yeah.
in the remasters and re-releases of that game, to say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly even think about. I always think back about like playing like The Legend of Zelda on NES and just being like like some of the dungeons, like there's the one that you have to like burn the bush or whatever. I'm like, dude, there's no way I would have found this when I was a kid in a million years. NES games are just different, man.
Yeah, they were
Wild.
different. I found all that stuff as a kid, but I did it with my dad, who probably did most of the work,
That
realistically.
makes sense. That sounds like a great time though.
Yeah, that was fun. You have 5,360th place run of Celeste.
So
That's crazy. They
I,
have
I
5,300 runs.
what's crazier is that I think at one time that time was probably like 40th place.
Wow.
Yeah, I ran it. So I was super into I Want to Be the Bashi, which is a precision platformer. When Celeste came out, it's also a precision platformer that's considerably easier than Bashi, but it's still a very challenging game for most people, and it has a really poignant story. It has absolutely stunning pixel graphics. I love the soundtrack of Celeste. I listen to it on Spotify when I like fly on planes and stuff. And so I was like, of course I'm going to run this game. I also played it on keyboard because I was just so used to playing Bashi on keyboard that
Mm.
I just played Celeste on keyboard. And yeah, so I played through the game casually once and then immediately just started doing runs of it. But now there's like obviously like super optimized tech. There's a bunch of really cool skips that people have found that you can use, really precise and complex jump combinations to do. Definitely one of my favorite speedruns of any, post 2015 video game for sure. But yeah, so I did some Celeste really early.
Yeah.
Like, I'm actually curious. Can you look at what the date is of it, and then look at the release date of Celeste?
Sure, yeah. So your run is 2018, February 03 of 2018. Let's see.
When did the game come out? That's
Came out January 25th, so like 10 days later, basically.
I was gonna say, dude, it was literally I played the game and then just started doing some runs of
Yeah,
it just for fun. Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
And that's about it. So I one thing I'm curious about is there's a widespread, I guess you've played a number of platformers and a number of RPGs, and then Link to the Past, nothing else really in that kind of adventure-y category, I don't think.
I did do glitchless OOT, but it was like really short lived.
Okay.
I did that for I did OOT way before I ever did Link to the Past even.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's about it, honestly. As far as games like that. Yeah, pretty much. OOT was another one where I was more interested in learning the run
Hmm.
and like understanding the mechanics of the run. So I learned the glitchless run. I did a bunch of practice, and I think I did like 3 RTA attempts of it or something like that.
Yeah. So how do you feel about, or like, how do you approach the genres differently between something like, a Crash Bandicoot or something versus like a Final Fantasy run? Because I
Mhm.
feel like they require a very different mindset or approach or something.
Yeah, sure. So if I'm doing like a platformer or something, I think the first thing that you have to kind of like find out or like ask or like discover is there like a weird movement mechanic that you must learn? Like a lot of those games have like some kind of like thing where they're like, oh, it's faster to do this. Like the Ocarina of Time thing, for instance, like on the the Hylian field area, where you like flip around backwards and you basically run backwards doing holding Z because it's faster to go backwards than forwards. And Crash Bandicoot 2, you do like a slide and then press the square to do a spin and cancel the slide, and you keep doing that. And Crash Bandicoot Warped, it's actually really dumb looking. You press the slide and then you jump at the end of it, and it like launches you forward a few pixels every time you do it, and you like keep all of your slide momentum while you're jumping, thus making your slide slightly longer. Like, so learning if there's any kind of like weird movement mechanics. And then from there, I think I would play through all of the stages of that and Spyro just like a bunch of times so that I got a general feel for like the layout of the level, where enemies were. And then I would just watch a bunch of really good people play the level and just kind of like see what it is that they do and like the pathing that they take and that sort of thing. The one thing that's nice with platformers is that a lot of it you can kind of like, if you again, provided that you've done step 1 and understand the actual optimal movement type, a lot of it's like you can watch the person and then try your best to mirror and mimic that person's
Yeah.
playthrough one stage at a time. They're very concretely replicable with enough practice and an understanding of what you're doing. And I think that's kind of how we do those. And if I didn't understand something, by the time that I had gotten into some of those games, like it was easier to get a hold of other speedrunners. Like you could like send whispers on Twitch even early on, and most people were really good about responding and answering questions I had. And for RPGs, I am like the old geezer of the speedrun. Like, it's fun to joke about being like one of the like 2 or 3 longest and oldest like Final Fantasy PS1 Final Fantasy runners that still run, but at the same time, I am the grandpa that has handwritten notes
Oh.
on a notepad. Dude, I have so many of these. I have one for every run I've ever done. Um and then we did a little deep dive. I just had to reset my PC's OS recently because my operating system got corrupted. And so I moved everything to all my stuff to an external and then put it back. And we were looking at all of my save states for FF9. Dude, there are just hundreds and hundreds of save states from the last 10 years of just anything I've ever like practiced, which you can make for that long of a run, a billion. And I think the thing with the approach to a game like that's less like, I mean, there's execution to it. I think the thing with that is that it's kind of a slow burn in that it's impossible to know everything about a run that long until you just run it for a while.
Right.
And FF9 is definitely a game where like you will learn and understand what mistakes not to make simply by making them. Like you kind of have to make those mistakes, or unless someone has specifically told you about them making them before you avoid them, I guess, because there's just so much information. It's definitely a game that just rewards people that know the most. And platformers, I think, reward people that practice the execution of stages the most.
That's interesting. I feel like so people Link to the Past players always say that Link to the Past is super knowledge based. I think that everyone thinks that their game is really knowledge based. I agree with you that there's like differing amounts of it. Like I think a game like platformers have more precision required.
Yeah.
Than something like a Final Fantasy game where like a lot of the precision is in just menuing and then the rest is like having a really good plan and understanding of where you're going and how to adapt to whatever goes wrong. But I feel like the knowledge ceiling is like really high in basically every game I've ever learned anything about.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And like the knowledge type, I guess, is also can be very, very different too. Like if something as simple as just like knowing the HP values of every single boss you're gonna fight in an RPG versus like knowing like the prize pack system of Link to the Past, like those are two like really, really valuable things that can help you make really well informed decisions. That if you do not know one or either of those things in the run you're playing, you can make decisions that waste time or a bad decision that actively loses more time than doing nothing, right? So yeah, you're that's certainly true. And for I mean, you could argue for every game that knowing the mechanics of the game is gonna probably yield a better runner. So you're definitely right.
Yeah, knowing is half the battle.
Yeah, for sure.
What else do I like to ask people? I like to ask people, so you run these very long runs and you've been at it for a long time. So this question is maybe a little different, but one thing I'm always interested in people is like the speedrunning hobby, it's like a pretty big hobby, right? It can take up a lot of time. So I'm curious what it displaced in your life. Like, do you feel that, like, were you just casually gaming with that time instead? Do you feel like speedrunning is more fun or more rewarding than whatever it's sort of taking the place of? Like, what are you, I guess, what are you getting out of the hobby? Or do you feel like you're getting out a lot? And I think you are, because some of this came up with like how you're full-time streaming now, right? Like you're getting a very concrete reward out of it at this point. But
I think it replaced me staying in touch with people from where I grew up when I moved away.
oh,
Like
interesting.
I did not need that like social like textually social relationship with people anymore. Like I had made tons of friends online on Twitch. I had made a handful of really good friends outside of Houston where I was living at the time. So I pretty much had like my friendships and relationships and hobbies thing like kind of covered. And I think that is largely one of the reasons that I don't really stay in touch with that many of my friends from high school and college. I talked to some of them. It's actually funny. I have more friends now from Twitch that went to Penn State at the same time as me than actual friends that I hung out with when I was a student there.
That's funny.
Yeah, like it's kind of funny how that's actually a thing, but that is definitely a thing. Yeah, I would say that. Like I didn't really need that component of maintaining contact with old friends anyway. I don't know if that sounds really sad. Like I definitely does not upset me, but yeah, I would say that. Like when I moved away, I thought I was gonna like, the first year that I'd moved away, I was like, oh yeah, guys, I'll come back like, in like couple months, we'll meet up. And then like once I started doing the Twitch thing, I just stopped doing that.
Right.
Like it would not be uncommon for there to be like 18 months or 24 months with me not going back home. Because my parents would come down and visit me in Houston in the wintertime because the weather was way better than it was in Pennsylvania, right? So I saw my family probably like once or twice a year. But yeah, I think I just started losing contact with more people.
That's really interesting. It does sound kind of weird to hear you say it that starkly, but I mean, it makes sense. Like everyone, I think, drifts apart from sort of like acquaintances or like friends that they had who they were mostly friends with because they were hanging out in the same dorm or whatever. And like, it's not necessarily that important to like maintain close contact with everybody that you liked hanging out with when you were living near them.
Well, yeah, I think you're naturally supposed to just forget about some people. Like
Yeah,
it just happens. Like I think if like social media and like Facebook and stuff didn't exist, I think people would just naturally forget about a lot more people from like high school than they do, right? And I think the other thing that was kind of a little bit like, I don't want to say like different or unique or anything, because like I'm sure plenty of people have been in a scenario like mine where they just like uprooted their life, moved someplace else for a job, and like had to like start fresh. I think like interestingly, it wasn't that like speedrunning and Twitch like replaced something that I was spending my time doing so much as like I was like seeking a community and something to actually fill that void that I had now kind of inherited when I moved, And I think that in a way, like over time, like I would go through gaps where like I would kind of step away from Twitch for a few months and do other things that I would kind of almost like replace that with things that were like more localized to me at a few points in life, So yeah, I think that Twitch kind of like filled a void for me more so than like, like pushing something away, if that makes sense.
That makes sense because it sort of coincided with the time when your life was changed a lot. Yeah.
So my roommate in college introduced me to Twitch. He was like a League of Legends player, and I would just watch him stream. Like I would sit in his room while he would stream and play League of Legends because I thought it was actually the most insane thing that people would like come and watch him play video games. And I was just so fascinated by that. And so that's how I discovered Twitch. And then whenever like I said, I'd found Final Fantasy speedrunning as a thing on Reddit, I just was like, I want to get this weapon that's locked behind a time constraint in FF9, and that's kind of how I got into it from there.
And did you succeed in getting the Excalibur 2?
It was the greatest day of my life. We'll go. Number one's obviously wedding day. Number two is first sub 9 in FF9. Number 3, the first Excalibur 2.
The Excalibur 2 is not in the speedrun, is it?
It is. It's actually like it is.
That's cool.
So convenient that the run would be way slower if you didn't get it. It is like essentially on a pillar that's not on a hostile screen, so you can't get random encounters. You fight a boss, and then as long as you've beaten that boss in under the 12-hour IGT, like in-game time mark, you can get it. And so you just, after you fight the boss, you just walk 5 steps to your right. There's a nice little dialogue that's from a character who, if you're like deep in the lore, is actually Gilgamesh from Final Fantasy V, and he finds 2 swords. One's Excalibur and one's Excalibur, and he took the Excalibur because he's like a dumbass, and we're left with the best weapon in the game. And it's sweet looking. It's seafoam green, and it glows kind of like a lightsaber, and it just looks so slick. And honestly, like of speedrunning, like not even like actually doing like RTA attempts, the amount of people that have come into my chat over the last 6 years and they're like, hey, I used your speedrunning guide because I've never been able to get the Excalibur 2 before, and this is the first time I've ever been able to do it. Like, thank you so much for doing it. And I'm like, you know exactly how it feels to get it for the first time because it's like a big deal, right? Like people really want to be able to do it because the game is really long for a PS1 game for a time constraint like that. If it was like 20 hours, I think it would have been much more doable for a lot of people casually when we were kids. But 12 is like you have to kind of get cruising, or you're definitely not going to get there in time.
I've never done it. I've never gotten the Excalibur 2. I remember reading about it on like game FAQs when I was a
Mhm.
kid, and there was like, people had strategies for it. Where like, I think there's like some blue magic that you can farm that lets you
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
insta kill some high level enemy somewhere or whatever to like whatever. But that's cool that people are still going for that.
I think when they released it on PS4 and Steam, like the HD version, they made it one of the trophies to get it. And so
Oh,
I think people's interest has been like re-sparked and rekindled because of that trophy's existence. Because there's not really a way that you can like cheese that achievement per se. It's considerably easier on the HD version because you can skip FMVs, which the IGT runs during,
oh wow.
and the game just loads way more quickly. So you have like a considerably larger buffer. But I still think you pretty much have to kind of like plan your playthrough to be able to get there. Yeah, I think that has had a lot to do with people's interest in pursuing trying to get it now.
That's cool. Man, I love the FMVs in FF9. I was so struck by them. They're such a huge step up from FF7 and 8. So pretty.
The Alexander and Bahamut scenes are my favorite FMVs in all of video gaming. So I'm with you.
I think the
Big
escape
big
from the
fan.
forest is the best one.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
He just freaking Tom Brady's the map.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Your wife Emma, you've mentioned a couple times now, also a speedrunner. Did you meet her on Twitch?
Yes. So I met her. I learned the Link to the Past, A Link to the Past in on Valentine's Day of 2016 with a friend of mine he was part of the FF9 relay that did AGDQ with me, Toju. And he and I and another runner all learned A Link to the Past for the 12-hour challenge, and then we just did some blind races the next day or whatever, which was a lot of fun. And then the following month, they had signups for an NMG tournament, and so I was like, "Yeah, fuck it, I'll sign up. I'm enjoying this. I like this game." And so I actually met Emma because Emma was commentating one of my races, and I died to Aghanim like a dummy. And then she came into my channel and harassed me, and we were actually just like we became very very good, just completely platonic friends for like a really long time. um and so a couple of other runners, and her and I would hang out and we would do races like every day. So like me, her, Greenham, the Sabin, Zelna, Blunt Bunny, Josh, Joe D'Amelio, like a bunch of people from like all around that era. Dude,
Yeah.
we were racing every single day. And then, um, yeah, and then we just eventually, like years later, we met up in person and hung out. Um, and we just kind of clicked and hit it off. Like I said, we were like really 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 good friends. She was the only person on Twitch that I think had my phone number. Like we were really good friends,
Yeah.
and then we hung out, we met out in person. um we went to a really shitty cafe in New York together. And then we went to Tim Hortons and Niagara Falls. That was our first date. It was great. And then yeah, we literally started dating, and we've been together ever since. And then we got married a year ago in 5 days.
Oh
So
wow.
our anniversary,
Happy
our anniversary.
anniversary.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That
Yeah,
might be the day that this podcast is released.
there you go. Happy anniversary, She's back there. Yes.
Yeah, I saw her walking. I can see like a 10
Mm.
pixels of your hallway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like trying to make it so that it would be normal, because like I crop my webcam on
Oh
stream,
yeah.
obviously, and so I was like, ah, this should be fine. And then I saw her walk by, and I'm like, nah, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. We've had guest appearances before, mostly from cats though. We've had a wave from a partner in the past. It's I don't know, it's fine. I think a lot of
Cool.
people won't actually be watching anyway. Mostly
Cool,
an
cool,
audio
cool.
experience.
Yeah, I was cruising through the library of people that you had
Yeah.
on in the past, and was just checking them out. And obviously, again, knowing a lot of the Link to the Past runners, it was like a who's who of people that I recognized. So
Yeah.
it was cool seeing that. Obviously, I watched a chunk of the JoshRTA episode. I was trying to look for something to harass him about. Recently, he and I have been watching a lot of movies together recently because we just harass each other about our taste in movies. I think we both have a good taste in movies, but there's just some things that he likes that I think are shit, and there's some things that I like that he thinks are shit. And it's those are the only ones we ever really talk about. Like when we agree about something being good, the conversation just kind of ends
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, more to talk about when you disagree. But you have the pedestal, the soapbox right now. You want to dunk on Josh for a sec? What's he wrong
Mm,
about?
that's a great question.
I thought you'd
I
have
think
something ready to go.
it, I'm not a shitter. um, I'm actually curious. I actually don't know which of these he prefers. There's two movies that were both nominated for Best Picture that were filmed at the same time in the same place. And I think he likes one more than the other, and I like the other one more. And they are called There Will Be Blood, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which is one of my favorite movies, and I think the greatest movie of the 21st century. And then
Wow.
there's No Country for Old Men, which is an also all-time great movie, and I think that is his favorite movie of that year. But neither of them won the award, so oh
Ooh.
no Country did. No
I was gonna
Country's
say that
the
sounded.
goat. Yeah. Um, and so I think we would disagree about that. But that's not like a particularly glaring one. The one he harasses me the most about is that I like the movie Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and he thinks it's like actually like a 2-star film, which is fine. It's all fun. Like I said, we've been watching a lot of stuff together, and I've enjoyed it. I really enjoyed you calling him a dinosaur, which is hilarious because I know I said I'm an old man with my paper notes, but I think Josh is older than I am, so he is a fucking dinosaur, I guess.
He's a dinosaur in the Link to the Past community.
Yeah, for sure. For real. As soon as someone says that when I find out that someone started speedrunning before me, I immediately think they're 40. So,
Yeah. No, it's infuriating because Josh is actually younger than I am. So, like
you old
chronologically, he's
bag.
just an older speedrunner.
What year were you born? Or
89.
he's an older speedrunner.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're about the same age though, right?
Yeah, I think
I
he's like
think
a year and a half younger than 2 years younger than me,
yeah,
something
something
like
like
that.
that. Yeah.
But started speedrunning earlier. Okay, what's your Final Fantasy hot take?
Final Fantasy hot take. I think 10 is considered really good by a lot of people because it's not hard.
Oh, that's a great answer.
I think 10 is one that a lot of people love. Because here's the thing: it's not that I don't think it's a bad game, but it's like a lot of people's favorite game, and they're like FF10 is like the pinnacle of the turn-based era. I think 10 is some of the most like eloquent and actually cohesive storytelling of any of the games in the series. But like as far as the gameplay goes, the fact that you can just sit there and you can just idle as long as you want. You can literally see the turn order on the side. They're like, hey, you can take this many actions before you're gonna get smashed in the face. Like there's like no surprises at all. I think people love 10 because it's a little bit easier than a lot of the other games. And if you look at the games that came before it and after it, like 7 and 8 and like two. I won't say nine's. I don't think nine's a super hard game either. I think 7 and 8 are a little difficult to kind of handle a few things. There's some hard bosses in 7. 8's got some tricky mechanics. 9 kind of goes back to the original FF1 style, and then there's 10, which is kind of like a good. I'm gonna piss someone off. Beginner friendly Final Fantasy game, and then it goes into 12 and 13, which I think are way more complex and way more difficult than 10. Yeah, I think that makes people like 10 a little bit more than it deserves. I think it's a solidly good game. Like I really really do like 10, but Yeah, I think that there's a reason that it's a little inflated, and I think that is the reason. That's my hot take.
I love that. I think I might buy that because I like 10 as well. I've played it a few times. I've like like I've beaten Nemesis, whatever. I've played a ton of Final Fantasy
Yeah.
10. I do like it a lot, but I have always felt it's a little odd how much people like it, and that does make sense as to why.
There's just so many ways that you can just not die. Like if you have a summon out, you can't die.
Yeah.
Like I've thought about this a lot, as you could probably tell, but but I always feel like okay because I'm open to criticizing like every game I like. Like FF9 is not shockingly my favorite game, but it has way too slow of combat. It has the worst limit break system. Like there's plenty of things that I accept are not great about it, but I think that's like what makes your favorites, right? Like you like them in spite of or because of some of the things that aren't great, So, what's your hot take?
My hot take.
Yeah,
Well, it's not a very hot take, but I hate Final Fantasy 8.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely reasonable. I mean, can I ask like, can you give me some things you don't love?
Well, I think there's a couple things about it. I think the story is bonkers. I never managed to finish it.
It's not. It isn't. Remember when I talked about 10 being like a really cohesive story?
Yeah.
That one is just such a mess.
8 is crazy. I think there's also an aspect of I think it's sort of a bit off more than it can chew graphically. Like Final Fantasy
Yeah,
7 is
sure.
very simple and like blocky, but it's very clear visually, and I think like the backgrounds are really gorgeously rendered. Like the stuff that's pre-rendered is really beautiful art. So like I think it holds up stylistically, and then I think Final Fantasy 9 they had like gotten their feet under them technologically, and the models are great, and like everything looks really good. And I think in 8 they were like trying to do 9, but they couldn't yet, and so it's like kind of unclear graphically and like doesn't look that good in a lot of places.
Have you ever played? Have you ever played or watched Parasite Eve?
No, maybe like a snippet here and there. I'm vaguely familiar, but no.
It's like I think it's worth just like watching like watch a little bit of 7, watch a little Parasite Eve, and then 8, and then 9, and you can just see kind of like the SquareSoft progression across all the games. Like, and you'll see that like Parasite Eve is like it's an even like clunkier like aesthetic of 8, and you can kind of see them going for like I think they wanted to test something that was more realistic looking with like more joints and like less angular bodies than 7 before they committed to it in 8. And like you said, I think they may have just committed too soon.
Yeah, because they really got it to work for 9, but I think 8 is not a beautiful
I think
game.
9 really does well because of it like reverting to like a more like, for lack of a better word, kind of like a cartoony fantasy art style, and I think it just really works with 9.
Yeah.
One of the most frequently asked questions I get asked all the time in lieu of the FF7 remakes is, do you want an FF9 remake? And I'm like, dude, are we playing the same game? Like, I don't think this game needs a remake. Like, if you go back and look at 7, I'm like, I get it. Like, people want something that looks better. I look at 9, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's just my personal bias toward the game, but I think the game looks kind of fine as it is. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful game, but I think that that's an advantage of being very stylized is that you don't get just like sort of blown out by higher rendering.
Exactly. Some things are clearly designed in a way that they will age much, much better than others. And FF8 is definitely not one of those things.
What do you think of the remakes, actually?
Love them. They are some of my favorite. I am not much of an action RPG person. I do like the Xenoblade series, like you mentioned earlier. But I really like Remake and I loved Rebirth a lot. I actually my criticism of Rebirth is that I think it had too much stuff in it. Like I'm like I wish there was like a little bit less at times.
Yeah.
Like when I play it again, when I inevitably play it again, I will definitely not do everything in the game ever again. Like it was just a lot. But I love what they're doing with the characters. I love how uniquely they have developed combat for each character to actually give you like people to like experiment with. Like for instance, just like for an example, in the original Final Fantasy VII, because of the way materia works and that anyone can use magic, I think Aerith is like the most insufferably useless character in the original FF7 game. And then in remake, she was like incredibly fun to play as because you can like set up wards so you get like double magic spell casting. She has a bunch of useful abilities. Even her normal attack is like completely fine. And it just made me really really appreciate that. Like I would play with characters I didn't really play with much in the original, like her, or even like Red 13, same type of deal. My favorite character to play with so far has definitely been Yuffie in Rebirth. I really liked her mechanics a lot. I wish my boy Kate Sith was a little bit more fun to play with. He's not unfun, but it's definitely difficult to kind of get a handle of for him. But yeah, definitely I've really enjoyed how they've expanded a lot of the characters and like how much we get to know them and stuff. I'm curious to know how they're gonna kind of like go from here. One of my favorite parts of FF7 is all of the lore that you get in Icicle Village when you discover Professor Gast's abandoned lab, and you kind of like watch the video, or you watch the videos, like they don't actually play them. You just kind of like see, I guess, a flashback of Professor Gast and Aerith's mom, and he's like interviewing her, and then you see little baby Aerith. I love that moment so much, and all of that lore dump and explanation in the original, that I am so thrilled to see all of that in remake and just see what they do with all of that. Because there's just like a lot to unpack in those scenes, and it explains a lot of the main villains in the game. And Genova is my favorite villain in the game, so I'm like really really excited to kind of see how that all develops. But yeah, I've really really liked them. I'm not much of an action RPG player generally, but they don't get too overcomplicated. And like, you know what else I really like about it? One thing that I wish RPGs in the modern era would do less of, that they don't do in remake or rebirth. I love that you can use an ability and the fucking character doesn't have to say it out loud when they do it. I think there's so much to be said about that for that. Like, make more games that do that. I picked the ability. I see what it's called. I don't need Cloud shouting triple slash every time he's doing it.
That's hilarious.
You know what I mean, though?
No, yeah, I mean it's a very like anime kind
Yeah,
of thing
it's
to do.
super, super anime tropey type of thing. Yeah. How do you feel about him? You like him?
Well, I played a remake and I was like pretty hot and cold on it. I thought some things
Mhm.
about it were great, but I didn't find the combat very fun.
Sure.
I felt like it was kind of between turn-based combat, which I like, and action combat, which isn't really
Yeah.
my thing, but I can get into. But I felt like it was like turn-based combat, except I kept getting like interrupted. So it
Fair,
was like
fair.
kind of
Yeah, yeah.
frustrating for me. And then I thought some of the like there's everyone has complained about the plot ghosts. Like some of that stuff I thought was handled pretty
Yeah,
poorly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But other aspects of it I thought were really great. Like I think it's gorgeous. It's beautiful to look
Yeah,
at.
yeah.
I thought like the voice acting was great. The characterization was good. Like obviously I'm a big fan of the story. So, but I haven't gotten to Rebirth. What happened was I played FF16 and I hate FF16, and so I
Okay.
don't have it in me to to
Haven't
play
haven't
Rebirth
haven't
yet.
finished it.
Yeah.
I haven't finished it yet. The I think I'm curious. Like, is the combat why?
In FF16.
Yeah.
No. The only thing
Do
about it
you
that I
like
think is
it?
good is the boss fights,
Okay. Okay.
which I think are
That's fair.
fun.
I just I I don't love combat that is basically kind of like that. Like,
I mean, that's really fair, yeah.
even even with the like icon switching and having different abilities, I'm still just like, I find I just do the same thing every single fight over and over and over again, and until I get to a boss fight, and then you have to adjust a little bit, and I don't know. Yeah, I will finish it. I don't know when, but I will finish it at some point.
I just found it such a slog. There's like, I know it's a Final Fantasy game, so people don't take me seriously when I say this, but it's like you're like drowning in story exposition
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
dumps. It's like so slow going, so many cutscenes, and then you have to like, I don't know, it's like very linear, but you have to walk and then you have to fight mobs. But the game is about fighting giant monsters, so fighting mobs isn't that fun. I thought. I don't know. I was pretty down on it.
I think generally too that I think one thing that kind of gets lost in people's like very loud opinions about things that they think are great or terrible games is that there's lots of great games, and those games are great for not every single type of gamer that
Yeah,
exists.
yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
think that that doesn't make the game not great. Like, people give me shit all the time because they're like, dude, you need to play Persona 5. And I'm like, guys, I tried. I promise I'm not going to like if I try it again. There's 0% chance I'm going to enjoy playing it. I appreciate that you guys love this game more than I love most things in my life, but I'm just not the person. I like the whole social aspect of that game is just not something that interests me. I don't feel any like high emotionally whenever I like I don't know, form a deeper connection with a character I don't really like either. You know what I mean? And I think that that's just fine. That there are just some games that are just some people will be like, this is a really great game, and some people will be like, yeah, but it's just not for me and they're not my type of thing. So that's how I feel about a lot of action RPGs
Yeah, totally fair.
that people like.
Yeah.
What's the last great game you played?
The last great game I played, Sea of Stars.
Okay.
Did you play that?
Yeah, I did. It was good. Fun time.
Yeah, I really loved it. It's kind of funny how much it's just trying to be Chrono Trigger, but you know,
Oh,
I'm
I think that's 100% what they're going for, and I think they did a good job of doing exactly that. So
yeah, and I love Chrono Trigger, so I'm happy about it.
yeah, I think that if you like one, you'll probably like the other.
Yeah.
So that does not surprise me at all. What's your favorite game show?
I don't know. I guess I used to watch reruns of Family Feud sometimes.
Okay. Do you like when people give like bad answers or good answers more in that?
Well, the appeal of Family Feud is basically just that Steve Harvey is really funny.
Okay, fair.
I can't even like think of game shows. Like I never really watched Jeopardy or like any of the
Jeopardy's
Survivor things.
dope, by the way. You should get into Jeopardy. Jeopardy's great.
I always
Unless you
like
hate
it when it's
trivia.
on, but I never
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's really good.
yeah. I don't know.
If you told me I could make a list of 1,000 celebrities I'd be interested in meeting, like I don't know, and he wouldn't be high, but that which is why the list is 1,000 long. But I imagine at a certain point, Ken Jennings would make his way on there.
Interesting. What about Alex Trebek if he were still alive?
Of course, he would be considerably higher. But yeah, I was trying to operate in the now.
Is he top 100? Trebek?
Dude, honestly, possibly.
Maybe.
That
Yeah.
sounds about right. Probably somewhere around that line, plus or minus like 20 from the centennial mark, we'll say.
That's great.
I think most of the top 50 would just be like various people in the film industry, honestly. And then it would be sprinkle out to some other things, and maybe Trebek finds his way in there.
Yeah, you're a big film guy. You're always talking about films on stream and apparently with
Yeah,
Josh.
that's my thing. Twitch isn't even my favorite website that I'm on because it's Letterboxd.
Oh yeah. Do you like leave reviews all the time?
Most of my reviews are one sentence and a joke about the movie. Honestly, they're not like
Okay.
actually serious reviews.
Yeah.
I do rate everything I watch, or at least I try to, but yeah, I don't write like real reviews. There's definitely some tryhards on Letterboxd, and I just definitely judge them. But
I think they provide a service to people. Well, rating at least is a service.
yeah.
I don't know how valuable the reviews are.
It also depends on the film. Like obviously, like if I was watching like when I watched like 12 Years a Slave, I probably wrote something actually like genuine that I appreciated about the film, right? But if it's something like I don't know, like I watched like a 007 movie the other day, I probably made fun of Daniel Craig or something. It depends.
Who's the best Bond? I don't have any opinion on this. I've seen like one Bond movie ever.
I actually do think Daniel Craig might be the answer. He's not like I think Pierce Brosnan's just my guy because I was a kid in the 90s and I thought GoldenEye was like the greatest thing
Yeah.
when I had seen it. But I think Daniel Craig's probably the actual best Bond. I really want them. I don't think at this point it's ever going to happen, but there was like rumors that Mahershala Ali
Oh.
might be or something like that. There's a couple people that were rumored and I was like, yeah, pick somebody cool, like somebody super suave.
Yeah. So I used to my first few episodes. Oh, I'm making a mistake. The first few episodes of this podcast, I was doing tier lists with people, and I thought it might be fun to bring it back with you if you'd be interested in doing a tier list.
Absolutely.
I thought you might be. So let me
one of my channel points rewards, one of the higher end channel points rewards that I have on my channel is that someone can request me to do a tier list of anything they want.
Oh wow.
I've done like pasta types. Like people ask some weird shit, honestly. But it's always gives me something to do whenever like I finish a stream or whatever.
Yeah. So I thought we would do the FF9 character, playable
Okay,
characters tier list.
sure. And is this just based on how much I like them, like how good of a character I think they are, how much I like
So
them?
the guests always total freedom to pick their own criteria.
Okay.
I would say your personal feelings about them, but if you'd rather talk about their mechanics or some combination or whatever, totally
Sure,
up to you.
sure.
Yeah.
This is actually going to be really interesting. You might have to like clip this and like put it on Twitter or something because I think some people are going to lose their minds when they see my actual order for this because I've actually
Good.
never done this for these characters and I think people would be very wrong about where I'd put
Hell
some of
yeah.
them.
I'm here to farm drama, so I love it
Okay.
already.
So I'm just gonna do them in order from like S down the list rather
Okay.
than character in order. Okay, so we're gonna start with Vivi, who's going in S tier, and he is the easiest S tier of all time.
Obviously.
I
Yeah.
did do I did a character tier list two different times, like 3 or 4 years apart, with some friends, and he is one of only two characters that we all unanimously put in S
Yeah.
together of the entire series. I actually think that Vivi is one of the most compelling and captivating characters in all of video games. Um, it's so interesting, like when I was a kid and encountered Vivi for the first time, how like unassuming of a character he is just by his like appearance and his like childlike behavior. Um, and then you kind of like learn just how integral he is to what the game is trying to say. Like all the Final Fantasy games are talk about different ideas, and one of the most prevalent ideas in FF9 is the notion of like coming to terms with one's mortality and like what kind of life a person wants to live before the day they die. And Vivi is faced with this like really early on when he discovers it, although he was created by a, we'll say man, just for the sake of simplicity, that he's going to have like a shortened lifespan relative to like a normal person, and that he was created to take life. All right. So he doesn't have much life. He was made to take life from others. And then there are these two characters who are the main protagonist, Zidane, and who we later find out is his brother, the antagonist Kuja. And they were also created with the same purpose. However, Zidane lives his life in a way that like he wants to spend his like the time that he has of his lifespan amongst like his friends and like working with people and like exploring the world and like going on adventures and like being around the people he wants to be around. He wants to surround himself by people that he likes. And then Kuja, when faced with his mortality, he quite literally begins a chain of actions which is to destroy all of existence in like a backlash to being told that he's going to die in like exactly the opposite manner. So he's like, though, if I can't have anything good in life, then you guys can't have it either.
Right.
And Vivi is kind of like the in between where he kind of sees these two types of people and these two like mentalities about how people faced with a mortal life, like what it is that they want to do and how they want to spend what limited time they have in this world. And I just think that that is such a beautiful narrative for a character that I think is so easy to like, with some great dialogue, some fantastic and very emotional moments, even in the first disc of the game. When you witness other black mages being killed and like it just breaks your heart even though you haven't spent that much time with him yet. And then at the very end of the game there's a letter that he writes that you discover as it's being read that he has written before he did die, basically thanking the friends that are in the party for allowing him to be someone that had the mentality of that former type of person that just got to be around people that he loved and wanted to experience life with, regardless of how short it is. And like everybody cries when they read the letter because it's just the like gut punch moment that you is coming because his life is short and he's gonna not make it as long as all of the other characters. He's not going to outlive any of the other characters. Dude, he's just the perfect Final Fantasy character. Love everything about Vivi. So he's the obvious S tier. All right, moving on. My
Okay.
other S tier. Oh, did you have something you want to say?
No, I was gonna ask if anyone else makes it to S tier.
There is one other S tier character, and that person is Princess Garnet.
All right.
Garnet is like an equally amazing character in this game for very different reasons, though. Like their stories couldn't really be all that much different. Like at its core, the characters that have like the major arcs, it's a lot about identity and like kind of like discovering like what it is that what they want to be and how they want to live their lives and stuff. And Garnet's story is just really, really, really great. She loses her biological family at the beginning of the game. We discover that she is actually, not from um, the kingdom that she is deigned to be the princess and later the queen of, and that she comes from like a race of summoners. Um, and I just love that she just like doesn't put up with Zidane's shit for most of the game, and like, and I think following Final Fantasy VIII, which has by far the most insufferable love interest of the protagonist in Renoa, Garnet was just like one of the most refreshing things, and also just a character that I've like grown to like way more as an adult than I did when I was a kid. And like even like when I bought this poster, like this was the only version of this poster that existed, but because it had Garnet on it, I was like, absolutely want that one anyway. Like if there was other characters, like
Right.
I probably would have got a Vivi one, but if like Vivi wasn't an option, like definitely would have got this one anyway. Um, but yeah, Garnet is definitely one of my favorite, like we'll say like female leads of the series. Um and yeah, I don't know, just some really, really great stuff, and like both of them. Okay. Moving down to A tier. This is where we're gonna get our main guy, Zidane. We'll throw Big Z in there. I like him quite a bit. It's speculated that his design is based off of Goku from Dragon Ball Z, and has kind of a backstory lore not unlike Goku from Dragon Ball
I
Z.
didn't know that.
Yeah, like that's where like the tail comes from, and then
Huh.
like he's like sent from another planet to destroy this planet.
Yeah,
Like
that makes sense.
there's some pretty good parallels. Like I think the theory is pretty strong. um but yeah, no, he's great. He's definitely a really fun protagonist. Definitely a complete shift from the characters that came before him as the leads in Squall and Cloud, who are what much more of the like brooding, kind of like emo-y side of that men can embrace at times. Z is more of a um, outgoing, wants to surround himself with people, very extroverted type characters, and he just has like, despite being like kind of goofy and silly like most of the time, the like 5% of the time where he's genuine and serious, I think his dialogue is just incredible. And to kind of like revisit what I said earlier when describing him in the Vivi conversation, where I said that he kind of embraces a person that just wants to be around the people that he wants to be around. There's like a moment where he's telling this story to Garnet about these two characters, which you ultimately can kind of piece together. He's really just talking about himself, and essentially is like, the reason I went on this journey is because I wanted to go on this journey with you. Like the journey itself didn't actually matter, right?
Right.
And there's just like moments like that where he's like really genuine. That I'm like, I get that he's like kind of like a goofball most of the time, but I think sincerely he is like an incredibly great and nice and like super likable person. So put him in A. All right. There's another A character, and that is Sir Adalbert Steiner. Steiner,
Rusty.
big Rusty, big Russ. um Steiner just for me has the best like emotional growth of characters,
Hmm.
and I also think him being like the one truly adult figure in the game, like just kind of like reminds you that it's important that even when you are the grown up of the group, that like maybe you aren't the know-it-all, maybe you aren't the person that should be in charge, maybe you aren't the one that knows everything and like has nothing left to learn or to develop, right? And I just think that his relationship with Vivi and everything that he learns from being around Vivi is just the sweetest thing. They are just the greatest couple in this game. Steiner X Vivi for life. Um, Even just like at the beginning of the game when they first become compadres and Zidane says something about Vivi being a black mage and Steiner like he like scolds him. He's like, "No, you don't understand. Like he's a mage. Like he's a very powerful wizard. Like you don't understand how powerful this kid is." And it's just fascinating just like his notions of like respect that he has for Vivi. And like I said, how he kind of goes from being like the typical soldier who just listens to orders and does what he's told, and then develops some like autonomy and almost like appreciates Zidane's personality by the end of the story, despite like absolutely loathing everything about him early on. All right, so that's the A tier. B tier. This is one of the ones that's going to drive people nuts. This is where our girl Aiko Carroll is going to go. It's like been a long time meme that I think Aiko's the worst character in this game.
Yeah,
Obviously, that's not actually true. I actually think Aiko is like a completely good character. I just find children characters to be very annoying in a lot of video games, and she is definitely an annoying child
fair.
because she's an annoying child. Like it just that's just is what it is. Um, when you get to the part of the game where she's introduced and you learn all about the destruction of the city and or I guess village of summoners that Garnet originally comes from, and you kind of see how Aiko has been living on her own with just like Moogles and no human contact for her entire childhood. It's like actually pretty remarkable. Um, and all of the stuff that she's kind of learned on her own, despite having any like adults help her kind of learn about the world around her. Um, is just like a really, really, really like nice series of scenes where she's just trying to like fit in with other people, and ultimately I think a lot of her being annoying is because she's just never been around people to learn how to not be annoying, and then when she's finally surrounded with people she's like inundated with the and opportunities to have conversations and ask people about everything. And so I don't actually hold her being kind of an annoying child against her at all, like as far as her character goes. It makes perfect sense that she's annoying. She's
Yeah.
probably super curious about everything. So I actually do quite like Eiko. She's actually also base magic stats a better white mage than Garnet. So there's that
Yeah.
too.
Like Realm.
Yeah, like Realm. There you go. All right, and then the other B tier character, Quina Quan.
That's a ridiculous.
I love Quina. Quina is like just so fun and I don't know. Just love Quina. That's all there is. One of the best scenes in the entire game is when you go to Quan's dwelling. If you have Vivi and Quina both in the party, you get like a bonus cutscene in which you see Quan, who is of the same, species as Quina, finds Vivi, and Vivi talks about how this Q raised him, and he's like talking about what kind of spices he should put on Vivi to cook him so that he'll taste good, and he's like thinking about eating Vivi. And it's just like really, really funny, and I don't know. Quina makes me happy, so there you go. Okay, C tier is Freya.
Freya below
Uh,
Quina is, I mean, it's a
Freya Crescent.
reportable offense.
Okay, so here's my thing with Freya. Freya would be in the A tier if the game stopped a third of the way through disc 2. If that was the end of the game, Freya is an A tier character. The thing with Freya, and I always talk about how it's kind of funny almost in a way, is that the moment that she's been looking for her lost lover, Sir Fratley, and when she finds Sir Fratley has forgotten about her. Like his memory is wiped. There's for some reason he doesn't remember her. And then basically from that moment on until the game forgets about her too. And
Yeah.
basically doesn't do anything else really all that important for the remainder of this story. And I think it's honestly just kind of a shame because I do think she is it's like all set for a really solid like payoff in some way. But basically the payoff is just that she reconnects with Fratley in the epilogue, and they're together now, but Fratley still doesn't remember her, and that's pretty much it. So my not huge fandom of Freya is not because the potential is not there. It is just because I wish it was like there was more to it, and then it didn't like come and go so fleetingly, as it were.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. And now for Amaranth, I need you to do me a favor. Can you add a tier below D tier?
I don't actually
Okay.
know how. Probably.
Go to click on that. There you go. Add a row below. And can you name it? Doesn't need to be in the game.
Yeah, Amaranth kind of shows up late and doesn't do anything very interesting.
I'm also like, to like some people's dismay, I love Beatrix. Like I think Beatrix is great, but I also think Beatrix is like the most overrated character in the game in a way, because people like fawn over her and love her because she's pretty, she's like this cool soldier, she has some really good music and theme songs that play. There's a cool scene where you fight with her and Steiner alongside, and then there's like a payoff with her and Steiner at the end, and like it's all great. And I get people liking her. I wish that she was just the ninja class character, and that at some point in Disc 2, she joined the party instead, but wasn't a knight, but was a ninja and replaced Amaranth. Amaranth just literally does nothing for the story,
Yeah.
basically at all. And like, my thing with him is that I've thought about it a lot, is what would we really lose if there were just 7 playable characters and Amaranth wasn't in the game at all? And like, there's really not a whole lot. It's not like Zidane like has some great, cathartic epiphany when he goes back into Ibsen's castle to find Amaranth, injured and alone. Like they actually do have kind of a cool conversation later that's like 4 dialogue boxes long on the airship before you go to Terra, but it's mostly just like not necessary at all. Even though his like companion Lonnie, who you fight in Fossil Rue, and then who Amaranth prevents from trying to like attack Aiko later, even she's like a more compelling character than Amaranth. And they're kind of like together, but she's the one that like does the talking, right? Yeah, I don't know. Don't love Amaranth. Definitely one of my least favorite characters in the entirety of the PS1 Final Fantasy series. Yeah, just don't love him. So there you go. There's my tier list. I'm sure people will be upset about Freya and very on my ass about Aiko.
You're exposed. All the Aiko hate is fake.
Real. Yeah, it's funny that I've all the tier lists I've done, I've never actually done an FF9 characters tier list.
Yeah, well, I did not know that, but I'm glad that I picked such a lucky one.
No, that's good. That was very good. Can I ask what you would change real quick?
I think I would probably have.
I'm getting some Freya fandom vibes from
I would definitely. Well, I would have Quina in D or F.
That's fine.
She's comic relief that I don't think is very funny. So
that's completely. I totally get that.
Yeah. Amaranth, I agree. I guess I'll just move them around for myself. I'd probably have Freya like at B. I think she's really cool, but it's true that her story doesn't get fully developed.
Yeah.
Aiko, B or A makes sense. Steiner, probably B.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I think I'd have Zidane above Garnet, but these 3 as the top 3 for sure.
Yeah, okay. I felt very good about them.
Yeah, for sure. Those 3 are all great, and then the rest are kind of can arrange them however you want. But I think these 3 are all interesting. And then like if you think Quina's funny, then like she's great. But if you don't, then...
Yep, that makes perfect sense.
So yeah, not all that different, but
cool.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we call this episode?
I'm really excited to see Gladiator 2. It could be really bad or really good. There's very few times in my life that I'm excited to go see a movie that I think I could walk out giving 1 star or 4.5 stars, and neither would surprise me. But this is one of those, so kind of excited for that. Just listen, my boy Ridley, dude. Sometimes he puts out, you know, sometimes he puts out Alien, and sometimes he puts out House of Gucci. Like the range is wide. So, I'm looking forward to Gladiator 2. The lead actor in it is someone that I've been a really big fan of for a couple of years now, and this is his first like major leading role. So I'm really excited to see how that is.
Cool. All right. Well, I hope it's either really good or really bad. The only
Fingers
failure
crossed.
state is if
Maybe,
it's just fine.
dude, it could be anywhere from Vivi to Amaranth. You know, like, who knows? But yeah, no, thanks for inviting me to chat. I really enjoyed this. It was fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on.
Speed drop.